Deployment Part 1. In this nugget, we'll be discussing deployment, and this will be Part 1. One of the things we're going to really be addressing here in this video and the next few videos is something that's kind of an unspoken bullet point, and that is where we're going to be analyzing the business environment and selecting an appropriate deployment method. You see, you have to understand some of the things we'll be looking at here overall before you can determine which deployment method you want to use. First thing we'll be taking a look at is just some basic terms so that we can make sure that we're all on the same page, because sometimes the basic terms are a little bit easy to confuse or mix up, and in previous operating systems we might not have used the same terms. And then we'll take a look at some of the install methods here as well. We're not going to show all of them right now because we're going to use some of the actual practical demonstrations in upcoming videos, but we'll talk about the methods. And then for the hardware, we'll take a look at what the actual requirements are, and I've got a document for you there that you can use. And then we'll also see how to assess the hardware in your existing environment so that you'll know if you need to upgrade either an individual computer, as in a home PC for example, or more apropos to our discussion, how you can determine whether you need to upgrade corporate hardware, because there's a tool that you can use to scan your entire environment. Did you ever think that you were really well prepared for an upcoming event or a circumstance and you thought you planned everything out very well? I recently did, because you see, Christmas just happened a few days ago here, and in advance to that, weeks ago, I had already bought my wife's Christmas present, and I had to give it to her earlier because it's a big fireplace that I had to assemble and set up in our living room, and there was really no way to hide it. So I bought it for weeks earlier, cost hundreds of dollars, and I had to buy it when I did because it was on sale. Well, my wife was thrilled with it. So I thought to myself, great, she's got a wonderful Christmas present, costs hundreds of dollars, so I really don't need to buy her anything for Christmas Day, right? Some of you are sitting there just shaking your heads thinking, James, what were you thinking? Well, that's a very good question, because you see, I thought I was prepared, but apparently I was not. And that's another thing you want to keep in mind, is you always have to be prepared also for your Windows Vista upgrades. Now, of course, you're going to upgrade more often than just on Christmas Day, but we will try to get you prepared in this segment for getting ready in advance, for deploying Vista, for planning out your installations or your upgrades in advance so that you don't have any unexpected surprises. And in order to make sure that your plans go well and don't bomb out kind of like mine did, is to make sure that you have, first of all, upgrade and migration terms down to begin with so that there's no confusion later on. First of all, you'll have an original or a source operating system. That's normally going to be something like Windows XP or Windows 2000, that's how I abbreviate that. And those will be the old operating systems that we're trying to get away from as we transition to Windows Vista, which is normally going to be our destination operating system in our current context. There's also a clean install. This is what we're going to do if we do something like just have a bare metal installation where we pop the DVD in to a computer that doesn't have an existing operating system or configuration of any kind, and then we install Vista on that hard drive. And that would be, of course, a very clean way to go, as the name implies, a clean install. We could also go with an upgrade. Now, why would we want to choose an upgrade? Well, that's going to be the case if we don't want to have to reinstall all the applications that we've got, if we don't want to have to reconfigure all the user settings, replace all their desktop shortcuts, and the like. And if we want to try to shortcut all of that, or if we want to try to circumvent some of those otherwise lengthy procedures, then we could just do an upgrade instead. Now, obviously, that has many caveats in many cases, because there may be applications that don't work with Vista, so you're not able to do a real upgrade, or there may be certain settings that don't translate well into Windows Vista, so you might not always be able to perform an upgrade that's totally seamless. But the upgrade to Vista, especially from XP, is probably the smoothest upgrade that you'll see from any of the previous Microsoft operating systems. An upgrade also includes, or rather it involves, one PC. Okay, just a single PC, where we maybe originally have XP, and we upgrade it to Vista. Okay? Now, we also have a migration. Now, a migration can use one or two PCs, and it's a little bit different than an upgrade. You see, we will still be able to retain our user settings and our data, but we will not have an upgraded operating system. With a migration, we have two ways of going. I could do a side-by-side. This would involve two PCs. And with this one, maybe I have XP on this machine. And then over here, I have Vista. Okay. Now this could just be a brand new machine that I got from Dell or something like that. I just took it out of the box, hooked it all up, and powered it on. And then I say, you know what? I sure do miss the way my desktop settings were, my shortcuts, my data files. All that stuff is missing from this Vista machine because it's over here on my old computer. What we can do is we can use the Windows Easy Transfer Wizard and make something like a USB connection using a special cable between these two, and then I can transfer all of the files and settings from this XP computer over here to my new Vista computer, and that way I've got kind of the best of both worlds. I've got basically a clean install, but I was also able to retrieve all of my beloved settings and files from the XP box. And then alternatively, I could do something called a wipe and load, and that's again going to go back to being a single PC. With this one, we will have a PC again with maybe XP on it. But before we do the upgrade, before we go to this stage, before we do an installation of any kind to Windows Vista, we take all of our settings, we offload those maybe onto an external hard drive. Kind of looks like a tire, but it's really an external hard drive here. And or it could be a USB thumb drive or a network location, any place else besides this machine. We're just going to put that data, the user's files and their desktop profiles, all those things are going to go to some other storage media. Then what we'll do is we will do a clean install. So we'll go to Vista here. So we might format that hard drive and install Vista, which is again where we're going to have basically this situation right up here. It's a clean install. But again, I want to get all of my settings back, and I didn't have the finance or whatever to get two separate machines like is in a side-by-side. So I'll just take those settings now that I offloaded earlier. Now I'll transfer those back to my machine. So it started off with XP. I copied the settings off to some other media. I did a clean install to Vista, and then I restored all the settings from the media to which I had early made a backup of all my files and user settings. And then just briefly here, it's also good to know about the various installation methods, and we'll elaborate on much of this further on down the line here, but I want to get this out of the way, at least in terms of understanding some baseline issues. One of the ways that you can install Vista is the same way we've always installed operating systems. That's to do the attended or manual installation. This is where you pop the DVD in, and you next finish your way through a wizard, and voila, you now have an operating system. But you had to babysit it the whole time. You might have had to wait for a reboot, and so forth. The other option you could use is an unattended installation. Normally this is going to use something like an answer file, which we can now use, or which we can now create using tools from Microsoft that will create what we call an auto-unattend.xml file. It's not always named that, but that's kind of the default name that we always use, and you can name it something else if you want. But this auto-unattend.xml file already has all the answers precluded in it. It's already involved with the answers like the product key and so forth. So that would help us to be able to launch an installation and then just pretty much walk away and let it finish on its own. There's also sysprep imaging, which is where we take an existing machine that has the applications and configuration settings that we already like. Then we use software to make a copy of that system into a file. Now we've done that for years with products like Ghost. And what we'll do is we'll take that Ghost image then and apply it to a different computer, a totally different computer, and it will then be identical to the source computer. The problem is we can't have everything be exactly identical, because what if they both had the same computer name? What if they both had the same why can't I think of it? The same SID, the security identifier, which is a unique way of identifying all Windows computers. Well, that won't happen. That's not going to work out properly. It's going to cause network problems and a bunch of other issues. So sysprep is a tool that you use to generate uniqueness on each computer that you're about to image. That way, when you boot up the destination computers that have received that image for the first time, they don't have the identical settings. You don't have conflicts that way. So that's another method that's been commonly used. There's also Windows Deployment Services, or WDS, which is a method that you can use from Microsoft. And this is a tool that Microsoft allows us to use now to create our own images and to customize those images, as well as to customize things like answer files of our own. This is a really big topic all on its own, and we don't address this in verbose detail in this video series because it's only important here to understand what it does and the basics of how it works. If you're interested more in the whole WDS functionality, and the thing that goes along with that would be the Business Deployment Desktop, or the BDD, then you should look at the 70-624 title instead, because it's extremely detailed on all of that. Now, before you go about installing Windows Vista, you need to be very sure that you're capable of running Vista on your existing hardware. And I've created a document for you here called Windows Vista, or rather Hardware Requirements, right here. And you can see it's a PDF file that I've made available for you. This is going to be available on www.nuggetlab.com. And this is just a document that identifies the minimum system requirements. I'm not going to elaborate too much on this. I will point out these top things right up here, however. Notice that we have a logo that you'll see on computers that'll say designed for Windows XP and or Windows Vista capable. The key word there being Vista capable, and that gives you core operating system functionality. In other words, you can probably perform every business function you would need to do with a system that had that sticker on it. And that would also indicate that it has at least the following hardware under this Windows Vista capable heading, and you can see what's listed here. So with that much hardware that you see listed here, it would be at least capable of running Vista. Then there's also this one, certified for Windows Vista. This allows you to run Windows Vista premium features, and that will give you not only the Core OS functionality, but also Windows Aero, which Microsoft calls it the Aero user experience, not the Aero interface, but all in reality, it is really an interface item. And that's what it gives you, fancy graphics in terms of the way the windows appear. They give you a glass appearance and so forth. And I think I've got it turned on here right now. Yeah, there you go. See, there's kind of in the title bar, there's kind of some shading up in there. I can also do things such as quick flip, which is going like this. Really choose up the bandwidth for our video, so I'm going to have to turn off Windows Aero pretty soon here, and I'll do that by going back down to 16-bit color. Because when you have a computer that's capable of running Windows Vista Premium, if it's running 32 bits per pixel in the colors, then it should automatically turn on the Aero experience, provided all the other hardware requirements are met. So if I want to manually decrement this back down to just normal Windows Vista without the Aero experience, then I would go back to 16 bits per color. And then while I'm at it, I'm just going to point out a couple of other documents available for you on nuggetlab.com. This is not something you'll need to memorize for our current exam, but this is just FYI, just different features that are or are not available across the various editions of Windows Vista. For example, only with Windows Vista, oops, I went too far there. With Windows Vista Ultimate Edition, for example, you'll have BitLocker. You'll also have this with the Business Edition. But the Home Editions, which are listed further on here to the left, are not going to have those kinds of features. But you might not care because you might not need those, for example. So that, again, is another document that's available just for your reference. And then I've also got here valid upgrade paths for you as well. Again, in the existing exam we're looking at here, this is not quite so much of an issue, but it's there for your information and just for your reference. This is much more important information if you're looking at taking the 70-620 exam, which we also have on cbtnuggets.com, which I also recorded at a previous point in time. But those documents are available for your information. Alright, now if you want just a quick and dirty method to try to find out whether or not a system meets all the minimum hardware requirements or if there are any other issues which are not listed in the hardware requirements that could cause a problem, what you can do is to use the Windows Vista Upgrade Advisor. Now I've made a remote desktop connection here to a Windows XP computer that's elsewhere here in my office. And what I'm going to do with this is, and by the way, remote desktop connection is simply a way of remote controlling that system. And the only real way that you can tell that visually is by this item up here at the top, this title bar, whatever you want to call it, up here at the top. And otherwise, everything I'm about to do is going to be the same as if I were physically seated at that computer. But here I've inserted the Windows Vista DVD on that system. And if I double click on this, I can launch the Windows Vista Upgrade Advisor. And I can do that by clicking here where it says Check Compatibility Online. Now once I do that, it'll take me to a website that allows me to then download that particular tool. And that's what we see here, so I'll just scroll on down here where it says download the Windows Vista Upgrade Advisor, and then I'll simply click download, and then I can either run it or save it. Either way, it doesn't matter in my particular case. If I wanted to reuse it later on a different machine, probably download it and put it on a thumb drive or something like that. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and allow this to download here. And when it's done, I'll go ahead and run it, and we'll see whether or not this computer is capable of running Windows Vista. And then here I've gone ahead and finished the download, where I'm going to go ahead and start running this now. So I'll click on Next, and it's just a real simple Next, Finish wizard, and I'm not even going to elaborate on each screen here because it's pretty fundamental. So I'm just going to go ahead and Next, Finish. Once I'm done, it's going to go ahead and prompt me to see if I want to run the Upgrade Advisor, and that's what I'm going to do here, and you can see by the checkbox that as soon as I click on Close, it is going to run that Upgrade Advisor. Now, once it does this, it's going to identify any potential compatibility issues I have as I click here on Scan. Now, this does take a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and pause recording, and when it's done, I'll resume recording, and we'll see what we got. So I see here that the scan has completed. Let's go ahead and click on Details, and we'll see that my computer can run Vista. It's always nice to see a green checkbox there. No big red X's or anything. But down here we do have some precautions or some informational symbols that just tell us that we might not get all of the benefits out of Windows Vista, even if we can install it. One of the things that we won't be able to get, for example here, and I haven't really looked at this, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have a video issue, and there it is, a video card. You see, I'm actually running Windows XP here within VMware. This is on another computer across my office that's actually running Windows Vista 64-bit edition, but I'm running software called VMware, which allows me to run one operating system inside of another. If you need to know more about virtualization and virtual machines, check out VMware.com, and Microsoft also has a competing product called Virtual PC that you can look into. But as part of that, and the reason why I talk about that is because the video driver that goes along with this, with VMware, is not capable of running Windows Aero Experience. There's also a CD drive instead of a DVD, so I should probably install a DVD drive. That's what they're saying here. In reality, VMware would be able to work with either one. And then there's system memory. It has 512 megabytes of RAM, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had a gigabyte? And if we did that, and I upgraded the video card, then we might be able to take advantage of the Windows Aero experience there. We also see some other precautions down here, like devices. I'm pretty sure that here we're going to see more about, the VMware video driver, again, does not run Windows, the Aero experience, so that's really what the issue is there. It's not a showstopper. These yellow exclamation points, these yellow signs here, I can still install and run Windows Vista, but just these things are just little speed bumps that I need to be aware of. Again, might not hurt anything. For most antivirus products, they're very specifically tied to a given operating system and the boot environment of that operating system. Here, I would just have to download an update to be able to bring that up to date, and you see the same for some other software there as well. So you get the idea there. This Upgrade Advisor simply identifies areas where you might have potential compatibility issues with Windows Vista. Now again, on this XP box, I'm going to go use another tool now, and this is something called the Windows Vista Hardware Assessment Tool. This is more hardware specific, the tool we looked at just a moment ago, the Windows Vista Upgrade Advisor, which also installs itself on my Start menu here. This is more specific to hardware and software. This one is mostly a hardware assessment. Now the reason why I would use this tool instead of the one I just showed you is because the one I just showed you have to run on every computer individually, and it's only really good for home use or one-off installations. This hardware assessment, once I've installed it, and by the way, you have to have SQL Express when you run this as well, but it's included in the installation wizard that you can tell it to go out and grab SQL Express, download it, and install it as part of the installation of this product. But anyway, once you get this going, you simply next, finish through it. The purpose of this is that it's going to give me a central location. That's why I have a SQL database. It's going to give me a central location at which I can store compatibility collected data from other machines throughout my environment. I don't have to run this same tool on all those other computers. That makes this a little bit more of a corporate solution as opposed to maybe a home use solution where I have to install that tool on every single computer. And so with this, I'm simply going to create an inventory database, and I'll just call this, our hardware, something like that, or whatever makes sense to you. And if I have an existing database, I can use that as well, but I'm just going to create a new one here. And then I'm just going to collect information about computers in this environment. If we have SNMP, which is a Simple Network Management Protocol, this can be used to identify running hardware on various machines as well. But this could require an SNMP agent on each one of those computers, and it just depends on whether or not you've installed something. It could be a third-party SNMP agent or something like that that you already have on all your machines. Well, you can just kind of piggyback on the benefit of that and use it. I don't have SNMP, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit Next here, and we'll continue on through. Oh, and by the way, I want to point out all these dialog boxes that we're going through with this wizard. You don't need to memorize all of this. Just get an idea for why the Vista hardware assessment is better than the other tool I showed you. And the main reason is this is more of a corporate tool. For the 622 exam, you're not going to be examined on each one of these check boxes and the minutia of this tool. You just have to have an overall idea of its benefit and what it's used for. And you can see here there's a number of different ways of using the computer discovery. I can use existing Windows network protocols. This is primarily useful for older systems. A lot of these networking protocols are not that secure, so I don't use them in my environment, so that wouldn't be able to find anything in this case. And then there's also the Active Directory domain services. Now this one, again, could be useful, except that if I'm trying to scan against a domain that I'm not a part of, or I don't really have a direct relationship to, or I'm not able to scan against, then of course that would be a moot point as well. You can import names from a file or scan an IP address range. That's what I'm going to do right here. You can also manually enter the computer names and credentials, but I'll just scan the range. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to enter in the IP addresses, and it's going to use something called the Windows Management Instrumentation to scan against these addresses and identify whether or not those systems are able to run Windows Vista. Windows Management Instrumentation is extremely powerful, and what it's capable of doing is identifying to the nth degree just about every characteristic of a destination computer. Everything from the make and model of the computer to the stepping of the processor to the version of the BIOS. I mean, it can give you just virtually every detail. But I'm going to go ahead and enter in my local subnet here. And it doesn't really go up to 100, but I'll just put in 100. And now notice, by the way, I want to click on next, but I can't seem to get there. It's just grayed out. The reason for that is because it's kind of a weird interface item. You have to hit Tab. Once you do that, then and go to the next cell, then you can click on next. Then what I need to do is to specify the credentials of a user account that's got full administrative authority on all the destination computers, and that it's capable of analyzing against these computers. And here, just for fun, I'm going to scan actually against a different domain, my internal corporate domain. So accusource.local. Okay, and I'm going to enter in the credentials, a domain admin for that account. And I'm going to use that on all the computers that I'm going to scan against. So I'll go ahead and save that, and then we'll go ahead and move on. So then as I click on next, then I'm just going to go ahead and start the scan, and this will take a little while, so when it's done, I'm going to pause recording, and when it's done, we'll come back and see what we've got. Alright, now once the tool is complete, what we can do is view the report. By the way, this does have to have at least Office 2003 with Service Pack 2. I have Office 2003 with Service Pack 3, so I'm beyond the minimum requirement there. But one reason why it needs that is because it needs to use an Excel spreadsheet for part of the reporting process. Now you might be wondering, well, that's a nice little wizard and everything, James, but where's the data? How do I know what hardware we've got and all of that? Well, simply go to your documents here, and that's the default location where it stores this data. In the Windows Vista hardware assessment, and within these reports, we'll see we have a couple of different things going on. There's our hardware summary right here. This looks like just a generic white paper that you download, but in reality, what this is it's customized for your situation. So it should show me in here somewhere, for example, a pie chart. There it is. A pie chart that shows how many computers I've got ready for Windows Vista. I only had 2 computers turned on at the time I ran this, so we're not really seeing a whole lot there. But you'll get an idea for what's there. It tells you, again, how many are ready for Vista Premium, or capable, or not compatible at all. Also shows you, trying to find some additional information down here. I got to scroll down for it. There it is. Some of the different applications that I might have installed. And there's another table down here that's also very useful in that it'll tell you what kinds of devices you currently have installed on your systems. And this would be in the spreadsheet that we see right here. So if I go over here, for example, too, and let me scroll over, you see here again a summary, which versions of Office that I've got installed, my servers, all different kinds of things that we see there. But my hardware inventory is one of the things that I wanted to take a look at there. We can see the model of the computer. That's a Dell PowerEdge small business server that I've got installed over there. It tells me the network adapters that it's got, the IP addresses that it has, all those different things, the device details. So gives you pretty thorough information in which IP addresses they're located on. For example, here on this particular server, it doesn't require any action to upgrade this to Windows Vista. It's got server operating system on it now, but I could install Vista on it if I wanted to. But some of the things I would have to download the latest drivers for. For example, it says here, the latest driver for this device is available on the Windows Update website. Well, that's very handy information to know. So again, I'm probably going into more detail than we actually need for the exam, but you get an idea for how that tool works and what it's good for. Again, I can use it to centrally scan my entire environment and collect all the data for the compatibility issues for my Windows Vista installations. In this video, we talked about Windows Vista deployment, and this was part 1, where we first of all started off talking about we started off talking about how I neglected to get my wife a Christmas present on Christmas Day. Yes, I know, bad husband, bad husband. But anyway, we did talk about also upgrade and migration terms. That's an important starting point to get going with. And then we also talked about the various installation methods. Remember, you can use some kind of an imaging solution if you want to do an automated way of doing it. Or you can also use things like a fully manual installation if you want to, or you can use some kind of a XML file. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a future nugget here. And then we also talked about hardware. Remember, you have to meet at least the minimum hardware requirements, and in order to determine if you have those requirements, you can use a couple of different assessment tools. You can use the Windows Vista Upgrade Advisor for individual bases, or if you want to use a corporate solution, you can use the Windows Vista Hardware Assessment Tool, which uses a centrally stored database from which you can glean all the information. Alright folks, well that's enough recording for me today. Now I gotta go out and go shopping. Yep, my wife's birthday is in January, so I'm gonna get her birthday present. Although one thing's for sure, she's not going to get it early, I can tell you that. And by the way, in defense of my wife, she's a very gracious and grateful woman, and I don't want to make her sound as if she's ungrateful, because she did really love her Christmas present. And I have to say that because I think she's in the next room and can hear what I'm saying. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.